Well, the constant killings and violence in many states of the Federation is enough motivation to take a stand against the proliferation of small and light weapons in the country.
Yes, indeed. And as part of government's disarmament program, plans have been concluded to mop up arms in about 7 states, and that's up next. Well, Ayodele Adio is still very much with us in the studio. Ayodele, good morning again.
Thank you for staying the course. They say the alarm bell has been ringing for a while, that 70% of illegal weapons circulating in West Africa is found here in Nigeria. But recall that the police began this mopping up exercise earlier in the year. They gave a 21-day ultimatum for people to, who are in illegal possession of firearms, should return them. What makes this exercise any different from what we've had earlier in the year? First of all, I think you should spell out the worrying numbers. When you say 70% of light arms in West Africa are finding themselves in Nigeria, we're talking about a little over 350 million light arms. That's right. The people who acquire these light arms do not want to use it to go hunting kangaroos. That's like one firearm to every Nigerian. Exactly. So they didn't acquire those arms to go hunt kangaroos. Most of them are criminal elements who want to perpetrate mayhem in the various communities in which they operate. So you do not expect that the sizable amount of people will respond to calls of mopping up arms just because the public relations officer of the Nigerian police gives a statement that people should come and drop up their arms. That is not going to happen. You're going to have a few pockets of people here and there who are going to drop a few arms. You saw that in Benue. It didn't change anything in the crisis in Benue. We saw that happen a few thousands, I think 1,000 or so people did that in Rivers State last year. Doesn't stop the place from being a hot button for elections. So you see, the problem is about blocking the leak before you mop the floor. What we're trying to do is to continue to mop a floor where everywhere is still leaking. So you have over 1,000 illegal borders that are unmanned in Nigeria. And these arms are finding their ways into the country. In fact, some are even daring enough to bring these arms through Apapa. That's right. We're glad that sometimes the custom officials are able to pick them up and intercept some of them. But that's how brazen these people are. And when you see some of these arms being revealed in their containers, you begin to ask yourself the questions: are we at war?
That's the point.
In this
and
country?
Is Nigeria really not at war with itself?
I mean, if you look at the numbers,
you have so many weapons finding their way into the country.
Strange, because if you look at the numbers, the fact that you have 1.6 million people internally displaced, you have a hunger crisis, or a looming hunger crisis in your country, several humanitarian disasters, the numbers of deaths in your country, there is no difference, between you and certain countries who are at war. So the strategy for me is about blocking that leak, finding a way to man those 1,000 borders. And that's a huge challenge. It's a huge challenge. The federal government is talking about the number of security operatives we have at present. We don't seem to have the infrastructure to make that a reality. I mean, for me, that's not an excuse, because we can't keep making the case that we do not have the infrastructure to man our borders, and so consequently, we're going to have light arms proliferating around our countries, and we're going to have people dying needlessly every single day. That cannot happen. I mean, crisis in Nigeria, when we're pretty young, when you hear about crisis in Nigeria, you hear people being attacked with club sticks and knives.
It's taking a different dimension now.
The way people use guns in even the most remotest part of this country is alarming. It's scary. And you want to think about the fact that places that were relatively safe in your country, imagine Gusau, Gusau was a relatively safe part of Nigeria. Plateau State was
one of the most peaceful states in this
country.
And
then you have killings every now and then with people using sophisticated weapons to gun down people in
So what is the sense in this seeming knee-jerk reaction on the part of the security operatives? I mean, it's not the first time we've heard from the IG, for example, that commissioners of police in states should mop up the arms within their domains, and you wonder how much impact really that has had. Has the IG been able to tell us this is the level of success we achieved with that, the previous mop-up exercises that we've had? Just like Femi asked, what difference will this one make?
Mopping up arms, for me, is not a grand strategy to deal with the security challenge that you have.
What would be that effective strategy, then?
I mean, the effective strategy you have to do is to understand that crime has become scientific, and by scientific, it means criminals perpetrate crime
crimes with predictable patterns, because you're human beings and what you do is systemic and is driven by patterns. So what you need are social scientists who understand criminology, they understand patterns, who are going to study the crime patterns in particularly these states and make strong recommendations for the Nigerian police force so that we can begin to nip these things with intelligence. And of course, like we rightfully say every time, we need to strengthen our police academy and our security academy, because you need intelligent people to deal with intelligence.
And there's the issue of budgets, which the IG, Ibrahim Idris, has cried, about, that there's just not enough money to equip the Nigeria police. That's the problem I have. Stock of their morale, and all of that.
It's unbelievable.
So how do they put their lives on the line to actually go out there and do the needful?
It's unbelievable. You have a security challenge in your hand, and you have a security apparatus that is underfunded. The notes do not add up for me. We need to tremendously fund the Nigerian police. And when I mean funding, I'm not talking about just buying equipment, which are extremely important. I'm talking about investing hugely in the capacity of these men who risk their lives every single day, investing in technology. Because again, I repeat, you need intelligent people to gather intelligence. Because you leave intelligence in the hands of a simpleton, you're going to have a problem in your hands.
Let us explore the strategy of the Presidential Committee on Small Arms and Light Weapons for a bit. They are saying that civilians who voluntarily give up arms will be given, will be provided alternative means of livelihood. Now, I'm asking myself, what happens to civilians who have never taken up arms, who have never been involved in criminal activities, and who don't seem to have jobs? Are we not further emboldening criminal acts here?
First, in systemic thinking, you just put your hands off the finger. First, again, you're making crime look a little more attractive than hard work and going the long haul. But then again, the problem is we're still assuming that people who take up these arms are carrying these arms to go to shoot down birds from the sky or going hunting kangaroos. That is not the case. The people who use these arms are using them to kidnap people where they charge huge amounts for ransom. They use them to perpetrate crimes around the country where people pay them a certain amount of money to do those crimes. Now, 10,000 naira in exchange for an arm that could allegedly get you $1,000, for instance, is no match at the end of the day. So that's why I said this is no deliberate strategy to deal with the issue, because you're just going to be, blinking in the dark.
But somebody also said that, we're just playing the ostrich when we look at the civilian, armed civilians, and not look the way of politicians who really are the ones, according to some critics, who are the ones who bring in these arms, because hey, our political process has been militarized somewhat. It's ridden with violence and what have you.
Of course,
that is really where you need to check.
Of course, we cannot exonerate politicians from some of these arms that you see people carry, because a lot of times you see that politicians fraternize with some of these hoodlums and gang leaders and touts. In fact, some even do it brazenly. It's open when you see notable and respected politicians partying with people who have who have a character flaw, who have been marked for criminal activities around the country. So politicians have a role to play in ensuring that things. Now, people need to be punished for crimes perpetrated by them or on behalf of them, until we get to a point where if there is a rally on your behalf and people are gunned down because they are supporting you, you need to be able to answer questions for that. You need to take responsibility for that.
That is where the challenge is, and that's, for me, it's just a part of it. How many people who have been arrested, for importing illegal arms, who have been arrested for, giving illegal arms, have been prosecuted in the last 15 years. Now, so some are even asking the question that you're mopping up arms on one hand, but then if there is no vivid example of punishment for people who are culpable in this act, then we are not making an headway.
Again, you are assuming that you're mopping significant amount of arms. You're not. I mean, you should go check the numbers. When you compare the numbers,
2,700 and something
2,700, we're talking about millions of light arms. So you're not doing anything at all. You absolutely are not doing anything.
Does it also reflect perhaps a lack of faith in the security infrastructure? We've seen gross disregard for human life in parts of this country. And the perception is that some people just feel like if the police cannot protect me, then it behoves on me to protect myself.
I do not think that the people who carry arms are people who are trying to protect themselves, because the truth is, we have not seen enough cases of people shooting down people in the name of self-defense. What we have seen is that people run down villages, gunning people down. What we have seen consistently is a criminal act by bandits, by thugs, by terrorists, you know, by criminal elements who perpetrate crime and murder and all sorts of criminal activities. We have not seen enough people who say they shot down people in self-defense. So the argument that people are protecting themselves, I do not buy that argument, because there are so many vulnerable communities in the country that consistently have been attacked by these bandits and these criminal elements who have been unable to respond.
There's also been the allegation.
I do not think that it's people trying to defend themselves.
There's also been the allegation of an effective stockpile of weapon system being operated by most of the paramilitary, you know, agencies and forces we have in the country. Recall that just recently there's been a back and forth between the National Assembly and the executive as regards the Peace Corps. We seem to have quite a number of them, you know, carrying arms, and we don't have a system, you know, to check and also moderate how these arms are being handled.
I think we do have a law, you know, that prohibits, you know, people who, if you're outside,
non-state actors
from carrying out. The law is clear and is explicit that you should not carry arms. And so when you have paramilitary, you know, and all of this agency, I'm afraid you might even come to a point where the Boys Brigade or the Boy Scouts will start to carry their own arms if care is not taken. You have vigilantes, you know, carrying arms, you know, manning securities in certain communities, which should not necessarily happen.
I'm afraid we might have to just leave it there. Managing editor of Globe TV, thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.